Do RBs matter for Dynasty? That's the question that we are going to try to answer, because on today's episode of the Progression to the Mean podcast, we are going to rank the top 12 Dynasty running backs heading into the 2024 offseason. I am your host, Shaun, and I am joined today by my fellow co-hosts, my good friends and fellow knowers of ball, Keegan Thompson and Aidan Haller. Boys, before we dive into the episode, yesterday was a pretty big football day. How are we feeling about the Kansas City Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers squaring off in Las Vegas for Super Bowl 58?
Worst case scenario for my vibes, for sure. Worst case to see Kermit the Frog approaching Tom Brady levels of legend status, and then also seeing San Francisco and Brock Purdy in the Super Bowl. But feels like maybe the best teams won. So in a way it's right, but in my heart it feels wrong. But it was a good day of football yesterday. I know we got to watch the games yesterday together, Shaun, which was a treat, absolutely. But other than that, it was a good day of football. There was a lot of fun football plays happening. The Lions were electric to open up the game. The Zay Flowers touchdown from Lamar was incredible. Pat was otherworldly at some moments. Kelsey was out of his mind. It was a good day for stars.
Yeah, Keegan summed it up pretty well. This is my Firefest matchup. If I could have picked a matchup at the start of the playoffs that I wanted to see least,
this would be
it. Is. Yeah, if I wish we could tie or something. It'll be good football. It'll be good football. It's just I feel like we've seen this a million times already. I know it's only like the rematch, but it's like, oh man, I didn't want to see this at all. But yeah, I was jealous you guys got to watch. You guys did both games together, yeah? Or was it just
one and a half?
Both, right?
One and a half.
One and a half.
One and a half. Yeah, but it was.
Yeah,
it
sounds like there was some good snacking, some good
vibes, some Italian cured meats, and crackers and cheese.
That's exciting.
The Modelo's were taken down. It was a bad day to be a Modelo yesterday. I'll
crushed a lot of Modelo's.
Yeah. I know me and Keegan are down on it. Shaun, how are you feeling? How are you feeling after you are returning to the Super Bowl for what is this, the third time in
12 years?
6 years?
12 years.
12?
Third time in 12. Yeah, we were in the Super Bowl in 2012, 2019, and 2024.
Okay. Jeez, 2012. That one feels a lot more recent. These years are zipping by.
We've been in seven NFC championship games in 12 years. So been to the Super Bowl three out of the 7. So it just felt really good to have the ball bounce our way for once. Like, I grew up with the Kyren Williams muff punt, the Jacoby Jones housing a kick in the Super Bowl, Jaquiski Tart dropping a wide open interception for Matthew Stafford. I'm just used to the Niners getting absolutely zero bounces in these games. And the fact that Brock Purdy threw a 50-yard bomb and it hit a Lion defender in between the eyeballs on his face mask, and Brandon Ayuk was able to somehow catch it for a 50-yard gain before scoring a touchdown. It's just like, it was one of those games where everything bounced our way for once, and it was pretty freaking cool. I'm not going to lie. Feels good to be lucky. I'd rather be lucky than good sometimes, because we've been good for a long time and definitely not lucky. So we'll see. We got to slay the dragon. We got to play Pat, which I'm not looking forward to. But we've got the luckiest man alive at quarterback just running around making shit happen back there. So we'll see. Well, it's like Eli Manning versus Tom Brady in the Super Bowl. So hopefully we could have a little kryptonite there to Tom Brady.
It's kind of.
I'll let that one slip for now, but we might have to address that on a later pod.
But regardless, I'm pumped for the Super Bowl. But I'm pumped about today's conversation. We've already ran through wide receivers. We've already ran through quarterbacks. We've gone through our top 12 at both of those positions. If you are subscribed to this channel and you haven't had a chance yet to watch those videos, go ahead, go watch them. It is a great time. We are debating a ton in the quarterback episode here. So I'm super excited for this conversation. But before we dive into the episode, two things. One, if you're a part of the 70% of people who enjoy our channel but aren't yet subscribed, hit that subscribe button. Make sure you don't miss out on any of the Progression to the Meat content in the future. And two, if you love player prop apps like Prize Picks or Underdog, you're going to love today's sponsor of the Progression to the Meat podcast, Chalkboard Fantasy Sports. Chalkboard's picks game is super similar, right, to Prize Picks and all the games that you've probably played before. But what makes them unique is the fact that you can take alternate lines. There's so many opportunities for player props at the Super Bowl. So you're going to want to download this app. You're not going to want to miss out on the action. And what's awesome is if you use the link in this description of this video or you use promo code RTM, you can get up to $100 in bonus bets when you sign up using, again, promo code RTM. All right, boys, you ready to dive in?
Let's do this thing.
All right, Aidan, you're going to kick us off. So Aidan's going to go first. Keegan's going to go second. I'm going to go third. That's the order that we're going today. So Aidan, who is your Dynasty running back number 1?
So this was hard. I guess there's no chance we went chalk and like we all have the same pick here, like we did with Josh Allen. I really grappled with all 4 of the top, which I'm gonna guess we have all 4 of the top backs the same, but not in the same order. I did go with the number 1 on Keep Trade Cut and Bijan Robinson. Bijan, it really just feels like the best is yet to come. He finished his running back 9 last year, and it felt like we were just like getting a root canal every week. Like nothing about it was really all that pretty. Arthur Smith just was so reluctant to use him. Something that I missed yesterday that I think a lot of people may have missed too is the Falcons just hired Zach Robinson as their offensive coordinator. Kind of missed him underneath like 2 awesome football games is Zach Robinson from the Rams. So under that McVay tree is an absolute slam dunk offensive coordinator. He's been getting a ton of buzz, interviewed with a handful of different teams. I didn't love the hire personally of the head coach going defensive. I was really hoping they went with an offensive mind, but I think they still nailed the OC hire. So, I'm totally okay with this. We just saw, the Zach Robinson Rams. Granted, he was the passing game coordinator, just absolutely feature Kyren Williams. So I think the best is yet to come for Bijan. The guy had almost 90 targets last year as a rookie. He's got like the CMC mold to him. He's a beast on the ground, can run any route from the backfield. Love him. Dude's 22 years old also. So yeah, not a lot of tread on him given, the limited amount of touches in college and, a pretty light workload his rookie season. Really like him this year and going forward here.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we've seen guys that have come from McVay's coaching tree really lean on one guy. We saw O'Connell lean heavily on Dalvin Cook in year 1 and then really try and lean on Madison in year 2, like almost a little too stubborn. Zach Taylor has just fully leaned into Joe Mixon since he's been there. And again, Sean McVay has been very consistent about wanting to use one guy primarily as his running back. I think Bijan in that scheme is a slam dunk. What he can do as a pass catcher and as a rusher, his ability to break tackles, his contact balance, his vision. I think the ceiling is kind of unlimited with Bijan Robinson. Yeah. It was a disappointing rookie season though, and I think there are ways we can write it off because of scheme and just coaching.
Where do you have him, Shaun?
I've got Bijan at 2. Keegan, do you have Bijan at 2?
I have Bijan all the way down at 3 right now. All the way down, but it's not that far. I have him at 3.
Okay. Who do you have at 1, Keegan?
At 1 for me, it's Christian McCaffrey, and I know like his age, but he's the only player in the top 5 that was born in the 1990s. Obviously he's a little bit older than everybody, but he's still not that old. Like he's only going to be 28 when he goes in this year, but. I mentioned this on the wide receiver episode and also the QB episode. Like your window to win in Dynasty is like 2 years max, right? Like you want to try and win in 2 years. You can rebuild fast. It's not like a real team, correct? Like I'm not banking on building around somebody because I need their age. And Christian McCaffrey is just no doubt. He's going to be the number 1 pick in fantasy again next year. He should be at least. And he has like no signs of stopping down. Plays in the best offense in the NFL under one of the best play callers. When he's played at least 16 games, so a full season, he's finished as RB10, RB2, RB1, RB2, RB1 in PBR scoring. I mean, he's so consistently good. He's also signed through 2025, so that 2-year window, you get 2 years of him, at least for sure guaranteed attached to Kyle Shanahan. He just posted one of the better fantasy seasons of all time for a running back. He has also some insane seasons under his belt. Like his year 23 year, he went 128 attempts for 1,800 yards and 8 touchdowns. I wouldn't blame anybody using a dynasty startup when they went with Christian McCaffrey for their first running back because you're going to get 2 to 3 more awesome years of him. And he's kind of like defies the age clip, very similar to Derrick Henry, where I feel like he's just going to be productive until he's 30, 31.
Keegan's going to say I'm dynasty pilled because I had CMC at 4. So I had him a little bit lower. And I know I have him at 4 because I have 3 guys ahead of him that are younger. Keegan, you said it best with CMC. He's had top 5 RB finishes in fantasy points for 5 consecutive seasons. And over the past 5 years, there have been 6 individual RB seasons where a running back has cleared 24 plus fantasy points. CMC has 3 of them. So he's the king of fantasy football until further notice. But I did knock him a little bit for age. And I'm just curious to know how he ages within Shanahan's system and what that looks like. And again, he's got 25 rushing touchdowns so far this season. A lot of it had to do with rushing touchdown production, which is what he's going to do, right? But Aidan, did you have CMC in your top 3?
Yeah, I've actually got CMC at 2 also. I just feel like this year kind of just like shoved it in everyone's face. I like to think of like CMC versus some of these younger running backs as like the boat versus the mystery box analogy from Family Guy. It's like he's 27, but
there
like
you go.
Christian McCaffrey's the boat. Like we know exactly what Christian McCaffrey is. Bijan Robinson,
he's the yacht.
Could be Christian McCaffrey. There's 2 more guys who, they could be mega yachts. But it's like Christian McCaffrey's the boat. Yeah, depending on like what you consider like your window in fantasy. Like again, Keegan considers his, a little shorter. I think Shaun, you're probably thinking more, maybe closer to like a 3 or 5 year window, in terms of like roster building. So it really depends on your kind of like your dynasty approach. But yeah, I've got him at 2.
With the Bijan notes that we're talking about, like I was kind of in my notes, I wanted to see like, who's the OC going to be, right? Like that'll change. Obviously, we know who the hire is, like coming from the Rams. You see what Kyren did on a points per game basis this year. He averaged 21.7 points per game as a running back. So if you just like copy and pasted that and gave it to Bijan, he's still 3 points a game short of what CMC was this year. Like still a full 3 points short a game of what CMC was. And I'm not saying he'll average 24 points again next year, but that's the realm of outcomes that I'm trying to look at when I'm comparing Bijan, CMC. Like he has a great situation now, but Bijan has a lot of work to do to catch up and like really earn that. Like the statistics are pretty damning for him last year. And obviously it will change with different play calling, but I mean, he only saw 3 carries inside the 5-yard line last year. He only saw 45% of the Falcons' total carries this year. So, and those will all get better, right? But
for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you can't go wrong with either of those 2 guys as your RB1. I don't have either of those guys as my RB1, but I don't.
It has to be then. It has to be.
I've got Jahmyr Gibbs as my RB1.
I knew it.
In all dynasty. Hashtag no recency bias. But look, these guys knows I went all in. I drafted him in a big money league we play in, way ahead of ADP in the 2nd round, and because it's a keeper league and I'm going to keep him, right? And just the case for Gibbs over Bijan, in my opinion, is Gibbs outpaced Bijan in fantasy points per game, fantasy points per snap, fantasy points per touch, rush yards per game, yards per attempt, yards, and they actually had the same expected fantasy points per game. Like they both surprisingly had very similar roles. You wouldn't have thought that going into the year that they'd like be in a 50-50 split and be kind of the explosive receiving back to a thumper, which is kind of crazy to think and what Arthur Smith was doing. They're the same age. They're both drafted in the top 12. They both are going to have new OCs next year. I just think they're going to be both incredible fantasy options for the next 4 to 5 years. I just think Gibbs is on par with being the most explosive player like in the NFL, the way he can change directions without losing any speed. Like that touchdown run he had against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the playoffs is just kind of everything you want to see in a running back. And you guys laughed at me last year when I said Gibbs coming into the draft is very similar to Jamal Charles. That was my comp, and I really think he has the potential to be a Jamal Charles type player. So I'm going with Jahmyr Gibbs as my RB1 in all of Dynasty. I'm curious to know where you guys had him.
I've got him at 3 myself.
Yeah.
Funny you said a comp because I saw a tweet the other day that was hilarious. It's a different comp, and it was like Jahmyr Gibbs is exactly what we thought Reggie Bush was going to be in the NFL, which I think is and they're both like fun comps, 2 like very dynamic playmakers. Just like he moves and just like changes speeds like so effortlessly. I love Jahmyr Gibbs. Yeah, like I really grappled with like him versus Bijan. I've got him in a keeper league myself. I think I got him like the 3rd round, so I'll be taking them, somewhere in the teens next year.
Keegan, thoughts on Gibbs before we get to have, I think, my favorite part of the episode when we get to hear Keegan wax poetically about a certain player. Thoughts on Gibbs before we move on?
I mean, I have him at 4, like behind Bijan. I think they're kind of like right next to each other in terms of like draft capital, like who they were kind of as rookies. Obviously, Gibbs had a better statistical output, but I just highlighted some of the issues with Bijan. Like 45% of carries total for his team this year is a massive problem. Gibbs, to me, is like extremely electric player. I mean, he had 6 RB1 finishes this year, and 5 of 6 of those were RB3 or better. He also graded better than Bijan on PFF this year. When he was like taking over the backfield with kind of a banged up Monty, like some of the game totals he ripped off were 27.8 points, 29.9, 26.2, and 21.5 PPR points. And he got a significant amount of carries too. Like from week 9 and on, he averaged 13 carries for about 70 yards, only like just shy of scoring a touchdown a game. And he was also catching 3.5 balls a week for 22 yards a game. So I'm all in on Gibbs. I just have him at 4. Bijan, Gibbs, take your pick of those flavor. I think might as well be 3A, 3B, or 3A, 3A. I don't know.
Aidan, I did say that you would go next, but I gotta know, Keegan.
Yeah, no. So you haven't said your number 2 yet, right?
Who do you have at 2?
Correct.
Keegan? Who do you have at 2?
Yeah, no.
It's got to be Breece Hall, baby.
Yeah,
How do you not? How do you not have Breece Hall?
There it is, baby. All right, this is your time to shine. I literally have no notes. In my notes, it says Breece Hall, RB3, let Keegan wax poetically. So, Keegan, tell us about Breece Hall and why he is your Dynasty RB2.
If CMC didn't exist, I'd be having Breece Hall at number 1 in the Dynasty conversation right now. So, obviously, year 1, rookie, on his way to Offensive Rookie of the Year award, if he stays healthy, tears his ACL, misses the rest of the season after week 7. In his return from a torn ACL in 2023, plays behind the 27th ranked run blocking offensive line per PFF and the 30th ranked QB play. And what did he do with that? He ranked 6th in fantasy points per game, had 13 double-digit point outings, finished as RB4 or better 6 different weeks, and at the running back position, he's 1st in receiving yards, 1st in targets, 1st in receptions. He only had 1 goal line rush attempt this year and only had 11.6 rush attempts per game, which is 35th in the league, and he still finished as RB2 on the season. He also finished 4th in the league in scrimmage yards behind only CMC, CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill. He did that all without Aaron Rodgers, playing with Zach Wilson, Trevor Siemian,
I did not
Tim
know
Boyle.
that. Stats. Oh, I love that stat, Keegan.
I mean, if I just look at what he was this year as a player and like the offensive environment is, like you can talk about Bijan and how poorly he was used like all year, but they had a better offensive line. Like they had a better offensive scheme than the Jets did. Like Breece Hall is a difference maker. Like he reminds me of CMC on some of the worst like Carolina teams that he played on, right? Like his ability to take a ball and get home is like uncanny. And I'm not saying Bijan can't do that too, but if I look at what Breece was able to do in such a terrible offensive environment, it's outstanding how well he was in fantasy this year. Like even Gibbs didn't have the statistical year that Breece did. And like they were trying to force feed Dalvin Cook touches and still getting Michael Carter involved in the pass game. Like Breece was getting taken off like the field for 3rd downs. He did so much with so little, and he has the most room for improvement, I think, team-wise, of everybody in this top 4. Bijan will get better play calling, and he'll get better opportunities. I could argue that Bijan and Breece are there, but it won't get much better for Gibbs. It certainly isn't getting better for CMC. Like they're at the peak of like their opportunity. The only thing that would change for Gibbs is Monty is not there, but he's going to be there next year. So Breece and Bijan both have huge upside opportunities, and Breece was just so productive with such a terrible environment that I've got him at my number 2 spot right now.
Wow. I think I just saw you have an out of body experience. Like that was incredible.
He's
Aidan,
electric.
Aidan, thoughts on Breece Hall?
Yeah, I've got him at 4. He was so much better this year than I expected. I think the receiving will be down a bit. Like, I don't think he'll have to do as much in the receiving game. But I think he's going to score way more touchdowns. Like that offense, like Keegan said, they're going to revamp that offensive line. You're going to have a real quarterback. No offense, Zach. Like that offense is going to be legit next year. I think he's going to score a lot of touchdowns. He's not going to have, he had 95 targets. Like, I think he's an awesome receiver, but and Aaron Rodgers has supported running backs through the air. Like, like Aaron Jones was definitely a dual threat guy for him, but I don't see a world where he's catching 95 targets, and that's totally okay. I think that was just kind of like nothing else in that offense was really going right. QBs weren't stretching the field. So like the top four for me are like a very like defined tier. Like you could mix all, like we've got all four of those guys. It's just in different orders here. I think once you get beyond there, you really start, go in your own kind of like journey, I guess.
My thoughts on Breece is the fact that he had the season he had post ACL tear is wildly impressive. It was basically like a Saquan Barkeley season, which is hollowed ground. To have that many receptions on a bad team and still be that productive is like Saquon-esque. So Breece is firmly in my top four. So I think we all have the same four, just in a different order, right? Let's
recap it real fast, Shaun. What's your order?
So mine is Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, Breece Hall, Christian McCaffrey. Those are my top four.
Yep. I had Bijan, CMC, Gibbs, then Breece.
I've got CMC, Breece, Bijan, Gibbs.
And I'm guessing we all have the same five, right? I feel like he's kind of staring us in the face. Unless
I don't think that we have the same five.
I have Jonathan Taylor as my fifth.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah,
cool,
okay.
Cool.
We all have the same one. My thing for Jonathan Taylor is I think he could easily be in this top three discussion with another really strong season. He's still only 25, which is kind of crazy to think considering he's going to be entering his fourth year in the league. But he basically had a part-time role with a backup quarterback without a training camp, and in a limited season, he still finished 12th in fantasy points per game. I think with a full offseason, Anthony Richardson in the mix, year two Shane Steichen, and he's under contract for the foreseeable future. I just think Jonathan Taylor has an opportunity to break fantasy football in 2024, and he basically had like an absurd monster nuclear blow-up spot in the final week of the season where they let him have the full workload in that offense. So I think JT is one of my favorite redraft picks. Right now, I think it's hard to justify him over the other four in Dynasty. But curious to know your thoughts on JT right now, guys.
Yeah, pretty similar thought process myself. The age, he's still very young. 2 years removed from that, monster running back one season. One of the biggest things I have with him that's like, a small red flag is, the Anthony Richardson like red zone vultures. Wow, good point. We're looking at another like Josh Allen once you get inside, the 10-yard line. But like he's also got more of that like the amount of times like we've seen him break 40, 50, 60-yard touchdowns, like he's got that game-breaking speed. Give me a full offseason with Steichen. Give me a full offseason with Anthony Richardson at age 25. Love JT here at 5.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of three players on my top 12 that's actually charted a RB, like true, like top RB in fantasy football finish. We'll talk about the other one later, but this one is CMC and Jonathan Taylor that we've covered here. He still had 4 RB1 finishes in 2023. No training camp, like a shaky offensive year. Like he still had, 4 top 12 RB finishes, super high in talent. I agree with everything you guys are saying. He'll probably never score 20 touchdowns in a season again as long as A-Rich is his quarterback. But I don't think that needs to happen for him to like be back in the top echelon of running backs.
I'm with you there, Keegan.
Look at that. We're all chalk on the top 5 guys. It's just different preferences, right? Like that.
This really is where it's going to start switching.
Aidan, I think Keegan and I are going to have the same 6, but I could be wrong. Aidan, who do you have at RB6 in Dynasty right now?
And I think I have this. I think I have your guy next, but this is not the one I have. I've got Etienne here at 6.
Wow. Okay.
I'm very high on Etienne. I don't think. Where do you guys have him actually? I've
7.
8.
So
I've got him at 8.
I'm right. Yeah.
I've got him at 8.
Okay. I thought you guys were both. Okay. We'll get to who
Etienne.
I think.
I
thought you guys were both going to have.
I had an impassioned plea about Etienne last offseason. I think he's a good player. Kind of a weird year, and he still produced.
Yeah, that was kind of my notes. Is like he finished his RB3 in a year where it felt like the Jaguars like really underperformed. I was just like, my main thing. We saw a huge uptick in receiving work, which was awesome. Obviously Trevor Lawrence loves him. He's a huge part of that offense. Last year was his first full season in the NFL, removed from the Liz Frank. Still performed pretty well. This year, I think we saw really what he could do with a full healthy offseason and whatnot. So I really like him. I've got him at 6. Again, this guy's just 25 years old too, just kind of going back to JT. So, there's still a ton of productive years left with him and, what figures to be a good offense for years to come.
I didn't have a ton of stats on Etienne. I just thought their run game was bad. It was just not a good run game. He came out of the gate super hot. That game he had in London against the Bills where he dropped 36 points, and then he followed that up with a 23 bomb, then another week of 22 points, and another week of 25 points, and then they lost their starting tackle for the rest of the year, and that offense just kind of went off the rails. That team went off the rails. I think that Etienne is a very talented running back. I definitely don't know if he should just be a 80% touch player like he was for certain parts of the season. I think it's good to bring in a thumper. But I had him at 8 just purely because I just have concerns about Jacksonville long term.
That's fair.
But impressive season, first full year removed from the list rank.
He's 7 for me, and I just believe he's high enough because one, he's talented, but he has a great role that some of these players on this list don't have that we'll talk about. But back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing seasons. This year he was 10th in usage at the running back position. He was also 7th in fantasy points per game. But I think the stuff that stood out to me was on the field for 74% of the team snaps. He had basically 60% of the team's rushing attempts. And he also ran a route on over 50% of the team dropbacks. So it's not just the rushing stuff. He's very much in a bell cow receiving running role. And even though his efficiency wasn't great, we could talk about injuries, just poor play. He had 6 games where he failed to crack 50 yards on the ground, which is not great. And you know what? He still put together a 1,480-yard scrimmage. He put up 1,400, almost 1,500 scrimmage yards this year and 12 touchdowns. He's a beast. He's got a great role carved out for him, very involved in the pass game. I'm not Bigsby's not a threat at all to me.
I think we know who you've got at 6, Keegan.
I think you might be surprised at 6 here because I have a feeling you guys think it's Achane, but it's actually Kyren Williams that I have at 6.
That's who I have at 6. That's who I have at 6.
I thought you were for sure going Achane. Okay. All right.
I've got Keegan, Williams at 6 as well. Keegan, we're in lockstep here, dude. You and I are
you guys both have him at 6 there?
Yeah, I'm at 6, yeah. Where do you have him?
I have him at 8.
Okay.
What he did in 12 games this year, 1,100 yards, 12 touchdowns, leads the NFL in rush yards a game. It was only behind CMC and PPR points per game. Kyren Williams is the only running back in the NFL with more touches, carries, and receptions on a per-game basis than CMC this year. Talk about workhorse, role, involvement in the offense. He was averaging 21.7 touches a game. It was insane. Also, he's just electric with the ball. No player averaged more broken tackles per game than Williams this year. So you combine that with the 791 rushing yards before contact, which trails only McCaffrey, and then he can make people miss. You have a recipe for a fantasy star. I mean, he was insane this year. 1,300 total yards, 15 total touchdowns in 12 games. Like I said, only second to CMC in expected fantasy points. And he had 68.5% of his team's rushing attempts. He's really young. He's 24 years old. He was fantastic in his role this year. Now they lose their OC. How's that going to shake out? I know Sean McVay loves him. Give me a similar role for him next year, and it's cooking for Kyren.
Over the past 3 seasons, only 6 RBs have cleared 19 expected fantasy points per game. Those running backs are Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler, rookie year Najee Harris, right, where he had 100 targets, and Kyren Williams. And okay, Aidan's rolling his eyes. Okay, expected fantasy points is a made-up stat, Shaun. I get it. All right, all right. Give us something real. Okay, over the past 3 years, only 5 running backs have cleared 21 fantasy points per game. Jonathan Taylor, Austin Eckler, Christian McCaffrey, and Kyren Williams. Sean McVay loves him. Their offense was night and day better when he was on the field. And so I just think he's a really good football player. The health concerns are very real, but he plays running back. All these guys could get hurt. So that's where I'm at with Kyren.
That is my biggest knock with him, and it's a big one in my opinion. So far through 2 seasons, he's played 10 and 12 games. it feels like the Rams are just running another running back into the ground like they did with Todd Gurley. And it's like, we're going to get like 3 prime seasons of Kyren, and like
That's
that could
perfect
be
for
it.
my dynasty standards.
But we're already through 2 years. So like,
Yeah.
if I'm looking
you're
long
right.
term,
You're right.
like he's a really, I don't know. You could look at him both ways in terms of like sell high or like, I guess there's no buy and low here. It's really just like, do you sell high? Do you think that there is, more than, like, do we have more 2023s for Kyren Williams ahead, or like, is this kind of it? And
That's the question.
I kind of think it's the latter, but you have to
That's
put him,
fair.
like, he has to be ranked where he is for all of us, like given what he's already accomplished and like the role.
Yeah.
So no, I like that for you guys at 6. I just got him 2 down at 8.
And I have Achane at 7. So Achane's my RB7. He led all running backs in fantasy last season with 0.65 fantasy points per snap. you were getting almost 1 full fantasy point each time you just took a snap for your fantasy team this year. This is the second highest points per snap of any RB who has played 25% of his team's snaps in the past 10 years, with only rookie Alvin Kamara besting him. The list of guys over the last 10 years who have cleared 0.5 fantasy points per snap in a season is a who's who of fantasy superstars, right? And
Oh my God.
I think what's a wild fact about Achane was he was PFF's number 1 graded running back this year. And usually PFF doesn't grade super explosive running backs that well, but he was still RB1. And what's crazy is that him and CMC were actually the only 2 guys graded in the top 5 in PFF, both as runners and pass catchers at the running back position. Like, obviously the injury concerns and size are a real thing, but I mean, come on. Like, this is just pure upside with Achane. So yeah, he's RB7 for me.
I have him at 8.
Okay. Wow.
I'm surprised, Keegan.
Wow.
I was teeing him up at 6 for you. I was like, take him home, brother. Wow. Okay.
Dude, this was maybe my hardest player to like properly rank on this list because he's just like a king of running back metrics. 6th in rush yards a game, 1st in explosive run rate, 2nd in explosive yards, only behind CMC. 2nd, so him and Raheem Mostert were leading the league 1 and 2 in total like touchdown rate percentage, minimum 50 attempts, and he's only behind Raheem. He's also 2nd in yards after contact per attempt, 5th in fantasy points per game. He's also a massive regression candidate negatively because he played way above his expected usage. Hyper efficient, threat to score anytime he touches the football, track speed that like most people cannot match. But he only played 11 games this year. He rushed for 100 plus yards in 4 of them. He has a blow up game with 203 yards. He was awesome in the receiving game. Like when he got more than 3 targets, he was basically averaging 25 to 30 yards receiving a game. He also averaged 7.8 yards a carry, scored 8 touchdowns. But like I said, he only played 11 games in 2023. And he only had 10 or more rushing attempts in 5 of 11 of those games. Part of that is like the offense they played in. Part of that is also health and availability. It's like I had really tough time keeping him in my top 10 just because I don't want to get like my googly eyes over him because I've obviously been a fan of Devon Achane like his entire career, like going back to college, but it's really hard to rank a guy that only had a 10 plus rush attempts in 5 out of 11 games this year that he played.
I was at 7 with you.
Okay.
Yeah, the dude's just like hyper efficient. Yeah, like dude, it was like almost 8 yards a touch is just like it's not sustainable, obviously. But Mike McDaniels like is going to continue to scheme him open. I don't know what Mostert's contract situation is off the top of my head. I'd assume he's going to be a bigger piece in the offense next year, regardless of if Mostert's there or not. So, yeah, it's he's a hard eval. Like the volume is low, but the results are beautiful.
Outstanding.
So like
It'll probably even out as volume goes up. Efficiency will go down, but the hope is there's this sweet spot. So again, my top 8 here, because I think we have all the same guys just in a different order. I've got Gibbs, Robinson, Breece, CMC, JT, Kyren Williams, Devon Achane, and Travis Etienne. Aidan, who's your top 8 so far?
I've got Bijan, CMC, Jahmyr Gibbs, Breece Hall, JT, Travis Etienne, Devon Achane, and Kyren Williams at 8.
Keegan, who's your top 8?
CMC, Breece Hall, Bijan, Jahmyr, JT, Etienne, Kyren Williams, Devon Achane.
All right. it's about to get wild. I feel like it's about to get wild. Aidan, why don't you kick things off with RB9 in Dynasty?
It feels wrong that I'm talking about him and not you, but it is Sade. I have got Rachaad White at 9.
Wow.
9 through 12 were hard for me, but
I
think
it.
Rachaad White deserves it after the year he had. Man, what a jump for the second-year running back. Finished his RB4 on the year. Obviously, the efficiency on the ground is still a bit of a concern. He's averaged under 4 yards a carry both years in the NFL so far, but his receiving skills are like he's such a different runner out of the backfield versus like when he gets carries. The dude had 8.5 yards a catch, caught 64 of his 70 targets. So it's like very efficient. Pretty much everything that comes his way. Like the dude's an absolute vacuum. There are some concerns with continuity. I know this is something we harp on quite a bit. I think Baker's going to stay, which is ideal for him. But Canales leaving, who knows what that means for his role, his volume in the passing game. So definitely some things to weigh in. But no, love Rachaad White. Dude's still just under 25 years old. So I'm a little higher on him than Keep Trade Cut. But I couldn't keep off my list here.
He's my RB10. And he's just a workhorse. I think he's just the new Joe Mixon, where it's not going to look that pretty, but you look up at the end of the day, and he's got a touchdown, 5 receptions, and 80 total yards.
Perfect.
On an efficiency metric, it's not going to be great, but he's just a player that coaches are going to bank on. And, yeah, he's just a workhorse running back. And I think the Canales leaving departure is kind of a bummer, but I don't think his role was fluky. I don't think it was Najee Harris catching 90 balls as a rookie. I legitimately think he had a real role as a pass catcher, and whoever the OC will come in will leverage him as a weapon in the game. So Rachaad White was an easy RB10 for me. Keegan, who did you have at RB9?
My RB9 feels gross. Like it feels like I'm just like using my like normal dynasty stuff, but I feel like it's Kenneth Walker. For my 9 is Kenneth Walker. I've kept him in my top 10. I didn't really want to. Part of me is kind of like nervous about what happened at the end, like towards this year with Sharp. Like he doesn't crack the 1,000-yard mark in 2023. Still has almost 1,200 yards from scrimmage. Had 9 touchdowns on the year, which is great. The lack of passing involvement that I'm mentioning, like with Sharp, is concern. Like super concerning. He had 70 less routes ran than Sharp this year in Sharp's first year, and to me, like, and I know Kenneth Walker got banged up a little bit, but I was kind of sold on him like being a committed running back. And like that's how Pete and the staff have done in the past couple of years. Like they commit to one running back. If anything happens, like remember, Kenneth Walker wasn't going to get the role he had until injuries happened, and then they gave it to him. They committed to him. So I'm kind of like banking on them still committing to Kenneth Walker. I mean, he had 65% of the team's rushing attempts in 2023, which is great. He also had 19% of the team's expected fantasy points, which is huge. Still has a great rushing role with Seattle, but he wasn't on the field that much either. He only was on the field for 54% of the team snaps, and like that third down role and 70 less routes run than Sharp is a huge hit to his fantasy output. But this is a guy who can still score touchdowns. Like he kind of has the same ability that Travis Etienne does, like home run hitting ability. I just like him as a fantasy asset, and I still have him in the top 10, but I think my number 10 is probably who should rank above him. I think Kenneth Walker would probably go down to my 9 or go down to 10 for my 9, but that's where I have him right now.
Did you have Walker ranked, Aidan?
I'll be honest, I did not. I think I would have put him at 13. There's too much. There's too many.
He's 23 years old.
Yeah. I love him as the player. I don't like Sharp. I don't like the QB uncertainty, and I don't like Waldron leaving. There's like a flurry of red flags for me. It felt weird.
Like I said, it felt gross.
But yeah.
Top 10.
Where did you have
top 10?
Where'd you have Rachaad White too? Did you have him ranked? I don't know if we got that.
He's my 12th running back on this list.
Okay.
Because like the thing is, he was so good this year in the passing game, but it also made up over 50% of his fantasy points in PPR this year was his receiving stuff, which is not easy to bank on from the running back position. Yep. So that was my only knock.
Running back 9, I didn't think was that hard for me. It was Saquon Barkeley. I get that he's going to be a free agent. Yep. He's 27 years old, a lot of injury history. But what he accomplished this past year was pretty special. I mean, did you guys have him in the top 12?
I have him at my 11.
Okay. Yeah. Where do you have him, Aidan?
10.
Okay. He had 288 touches, 9 touchdowns, and he finishes the RB9 in fantasy, playing in the 29th worst scoring offense, rushing behind PFF's 30th ranked O-line. If he stays on the Giants, we know he'll be the focal point of the offense with Dable. If he goes to the Houston Texans or the Dallas Cowboys or whoever, right? Like there are options out there for him. I think wheels are up. I think overall this is a great time to buy Saquon Barkeley. So he's my Dynasty RB9.
I'm excited for him to find a new home. If he stays in New York, I'd be pretty bummed. I'd like to see him get run with another offense. Yeah, I had him at 10.
Yeah, like of the top 15 running backs, like on a points per game basis, like 12 of them played on winning teams, Breece and Saquon being some of those that didn't. But
exactly.
Saquon has insane usage. They also have really good draft capital. They have 3 picks in the top 50 this year. So if he does stay with the Giants, like I'm not going to hate on it. Like obviously he'll have a great role, but they could make some moves. They could get a little bit better. But yeah, RB7 expected fantasy points a game, second in teams expected fantasy points percentage, like second in overall team percentage of expected fantasy points this year from the running back position. Like he was very much a bell cow, ran a route on over 50% of the team's dropbacks, 6 in target share among RBs. Like I totally had to keep him in here. He's the only other running back on my list that's had a true RB1, like that's top position finish.
Yeah, so that was my 9, and I had Rachaad White at 10. And then I had Isaiah Pacheco at 11. Do you guys have Pacheco in here? Did he make your list?
Pacheco did not crack my list.
Oh, you got him at 12. Okay.
I've got him at 12.
Aidan, talk me through it, because I felt insane having Pacheco in there. What are your thoughts on Isaiah Pacheco?
A lot of this is just his role. Like he had a really good, like, I don't think we really knew what was going to happen in this backfield this year. The dude almost clipped 1,000 yards on the ground, 9 touchdowns, like has really gained the trust as like the go-to running back there. I know he missed a couple games with injury, but as long as he's tied to the Patrick Mahomes and the Andy Reid offense, like what's there not to like here? I figure they're going to be better next year than they were this year. It was kind of weird vibes for the Chiefs a lot of this year, but I like Pacheco. He's just under 25 years old, tied to elite offense ability. So it felt weird. It definitely felt weird sneaking him in here, especially after snubbing Kenneth Walker. Like I think Kenneth Walker is,
I feel like
he's such a better running back. Like I think he's such a better talent. Yeah. But like a lot of this is just like situation. Like Isaiah Pacheco, like Kenneth Walker on the Chiefs. Oh my God, dude. Like I would go nuts. He's up to like 6 for me. But it's big time situation vibes here for Pacheco.
I think too, something with Pacheco that's really important is he's okay. So he led the Chiefs in attempt share in back-to-back seasons. Doing that as a 7th round rookie is a really big deal. Winning the Super Bowl, he was awesome in the playoff run. Doing it in his second year was kind of expected. What was really crazy for me and why I moved the needle up for Pacheco is he had a 2.5% target share his rookie season. That jumped all the way up to 10 his sophomore year. He's just been excellent for back-to-back years now. I was kind of a hater because his running style, but I think I've become Pacheco pilled. And what the Chiefs really are going to draft another running back? Like, no, they're just going to continue drafting receivers and defensive players, and they got their rookie running back in the 7th round. So I think he's going to be on the Chiefs for foreseeable future. I think he's a great asset right now in Dynasty. I'd buy him at cost, honestly, Jacob.
It sounds like I have 2 players on my top 12 that you guys didn't have on yours, because I haven't talked about my number 10 yet, but it's James Cook.
I've got him. He was my 11.
I do not have James Cook. I don't have James Cook on my list.
That was my 11.
I want to go through some of these stats with you guys on James Cook. So
he was awesome.
Almost 1,600 yards from scrimmage in 2023. He only has 6 touchdowns. Like that is what held his fantasy production back. But he almost has 500 yards receiving. He goes over 1,100 on the ground, 4.7 yards per carry. He was like pretty good at the RB position in total targets, but 18th in like total targets at the position, 20th in route percentage, 15th in expected fantasy points. But through 2 seasons in the NFL, James Cook ranks 7th in fantasy points per touch, with Breece being the only younger running back on that list. Like, that's crazy to me. Like, he is so valuable on a per touch basis. Every statistic tells me James Cook is really, really good, and he's so good with the ball in his hands. Just like he has a touchdown merchant on his team and Josh Allen, and that's totally okay. But I think 6 touchdowns is such a low number for James Cook. He can easily get past that with like a couple big runs and like kind of have similar scoring opportunities as Breece, like where he's kind of hitting those 20-yarders, 30-yarders. Like I just looked at every stat and I'm like, oh my gosh, he's been extremely efficient in his career so far. He's a great runner. He's a versatile like pass catcher. He did only have 5.8% of his carries come inside the 10-yard line. And like the average qualified RB has around like 8% of his carries come from in there, but that can all change. Joe Brady, like after that like pivot happened on the offensive coordinator side, I thought James Cook just got even better. His role got better. I was enamored with some of his stats that I saw from Cook this year. It is really impressive.
I love the talent. He just finished outside my top 12. It's just as simple as that. There's really the running backs are good. I think he's a fringe RB1 guy in Dynasty moving forward.
Yeah, I think we've only got one. I think your final guy's the final. Like I think me and Keegan are both through 12 already.
Okay, so neither of you guys had Javonte? I didn't have Javonte either, but I thought about it.
He's my 13.
Okay.
He'd probably like my 14, yeah.
I think, and I'm going to sound kind of contrarian here, and it's not that sexy, but I just don't know how I could leave Josh Jacobs out of the top 12. He's 26 years old. He was PFF's number 1 graded running back in 2022. His follow-up year, kind of a weird year for him. He held out of the 2023 offseason. He was injured for a better part of the second half of the season, but he still led the NFL in team rushing attempt share at 77%. So he accounted for 77% of the Raiders' attempts this season. Like the workload is just absurd. Antonio Pierce is going to run the fuck out of the ball. And if he's on the Raiders next year, I think you could pencil Josh Jacobs into another 300 attempt, 50-plus target season in an improved offense. But if you look at his numbers right before he got hurt, he was really starting to get going under Pierce. He had that huge game against the Chiefs where he broke off like a 60-yard touchdown run. I personally am banking on the Raiders bringing him back. I think he's an important part of their identity. And if so, I think he's going to have a monster volume season. So that's why I've got him at RB12 Dynasty.
Yeah, that's fair. The team uncertainty definitely weighed into my decision because as of right now, he does not have a team. He will. I would guess it's the Raiders, but, for whatever reason, if he goes to, like more of a like committee, it'd definitely be a bit of a knock on his value.
Might be different heading into free agency, right? But
yeah,
I'm making the assumption he's going to come back.
Yeah.
So I think Antonio Pierce is going to run the hell out of the ball. And I know Jahmyr White showed some flashes, but Josh Jacobs is better than Jahmyr White.
Yeah, he's not.
All right, so that's our top 12. So I'll recap. My 12 were Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, Breece Hall, Christian McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, Kyren Williams, Devon Achane, Travis Etienne, Saquon Barkeley, Rachaad White, Isaiah Pacheco, and Josh Jacobs. Aidan, who were your 12?
I had Bijan, CMC, Gibbs, Breece, JT, Etienne, Achane, Kyren, Sade, Saquon, Pacheco, and James Cook.
Keegan.
And I've got CMC, then Breece Hall, then Bijan, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jonathan Taylor, Travis Etienne, Kyren Williams, Devon Achane, Kenneth Walker, James Cook, Saquon Barkley, Rachaad White.
I think running backs matter, but I don't know if they do now that we went through it. I'm like, you could easily win some games with Kenneth Walker, Javonte Williams, or Rachaad White is your RB1. Like, you'll be fine.
Dude, you can win games with Jalen Warren in your RB2 spot. It's all right.
It's a wide receivers league unless you got like one of the top
CMC.
3 or 4 guys.
Yeah. The top 4 are very exciting, but they age out so fast. But maybe we'll see. Maybe we have some running backs here that are really good and really talented. Maybe they have a little bit extended primes. Really,
if I was in a startup this year and I knew what the RB class is this year, like I would prioritize the fuck out of getting one of these top 4 running backs
without a doubt.
That's a good point. But that's it for our RB ranking show. If you made it all the way through this episode, again, follow us wherever you are on social media, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, at RTM Fantasy Regression to the Mean Podcast. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Till next time.